This is Suspicious Minds with Wade Durbin and Burl Tuttle.
Hey, let's make an episode.
Yeah, you know what? And I'm going to, as we get going, I'm just going to say happy Elvis birthday to you.
Oh, and happy Elvis birthday to you as well.
Yeah, it is January 8th. It's our final, it's episode 10. It's the last one of the season. So
Yes. And coincidentally enough, it's also launch day of our podcast. We released our first episode today.
Yep. Felt pretty good. Yep.
Yeah.
I was shocked. I didn't know it was going to happen, and then it did, and then it felt really good afterwards.
And then, people listened to the hell out of it to the tune of, how many? Like 21 plays the first day? That's not so bad.
Well, it's not so bad because we barely told anybody.
Right.
It's just sort of a soft opening sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. So to speak.
Absolutely. What I think is they're going to go back and they're going to find that episode later down the road, and they're going to I think I missed episode 1. Like they may get into it later on, and then they'll be happy to find it. Like,
they will.
Because, most people, they start podcasts, they start at like episode 4 or 5.
Well, because, that's how long it takes to usually get going.
Yeah, got to hit your stride. So,
right, exactly.
Yeah. You don't want to watch the pilot.
Exactly.
Nah, I'm kidding. They'll listen to it. I think there's some good stuff in there. I remember there being good stuff.
Yeah, I need to listen to it back and remember exactly what we said. But I guess it's not important. Hey, listener, you listen to it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you do the heavy lifting in this particular instance.
You're a listener. Do the listening.
Exactly. So welcome to the show. I am Burl.
And I am Wade.
All right. And this is Suspicious Minds. And so today what we chose to talk about is actually not an Elvis movie, but it's a movie based on, I was like, when they say loosely based on, they mean pretty much entirely based on Elvis's life.
Right.
Called Living Legend, The Story of Eli Canfield. I mean, that's not the title. It's just called Living Legend from 1980, but it's about...
Also known as Living Legend, The King of Rock and Roll, which kind of, it's a little on the nose there, in a movie about... That's not about Elvis Presley, as it were.
Right.
But...
not so thinly veiled.
Exactly. And this was filmed in 1979, released in 1980, and a real close connection to actual real-life Elvis Presley. The co-star of the film, the female lead, is actually Ginger Alden, who was Elvis's lady love at the end of his life.
Yep. And then the character of Eli Canfield is played by a gentleman named Earl Owensby, who I didn't know a whole lot about until we watched this film. And man, I just kind of went down the rabbit hole, kind of finding some stuff out. Pretty interesting character who kind of started his own film movement in the Carolinas in the 70s and made quite a few films there.
Yeah. Various capacities, acting, producing, never directing, never writing, but he assembled talent and also used his business acumen to open EO Studios out of North Carolina, which is this massive soundstage, which by all accounts is still in use today, in various capacities. I think they film a lot of, commercials there and just stuff that is filmed in North Carolina. He's still with us as of this taping. Earl Owensby, still alive.
Yeah, roughly the age Elvis would have been as well. I think he's within a year or two, right?
Right. I think maybe 1 year younger than Elvis. But yeah, this was a film I happened onto just completely by chance. I was looking around on YouTube for something Elvis related. I don't exactly remember what. And then it just popped up, this feature-length film uploaded on YouTube in its entirety. And I clicked on it and watched about 5 minutes of it and just basically knew we had to do an episode about it because it's a real oddity. It's a very strange story.
Yeah, it's really odd. And once again, like I said, it's the king of rock and roll, but they claim it's, not based on Elvis, but it is so hard to deny that it is completely based on Elvis. Right. They might have taken some liberties with the story here and there, but it's definitely an Elvis story. So
Right. And most of the outfits that Eli Canfield wears on stage are just exactly Elvis jumpsuits.
Well, they're exactly Elvis jumpsuits, but they're sort of the quality that, like, the band would add. Like, maybe slightly better than that.
Right.
Yeah, because they don't look the highest of quality. But they're saving some bucks on the production. And I'm sure they're just like, it'll look good on film. We'll just put a filter on it. A nice glossy filter. Smear a little Vaseline on the lens. In a couple of those scenes when he's on stage, it'll look fine.
Right.
So,
well, Earl Owensby as a star and producer kind of famously never spent more than $100,000 making a movie.
It shows.
Right.
That part shows. And I'm going to say there's a couple scenes where I think they just keep reusing. They just move the furniture around in a couple of rooms just to make it appear to be a different place. And like a very small house is what it looks like.
Right.
But
well, I mean, it's very obviously shot in EO Studios in North Carolina.
Right.
The soundstage. They built sets inside there, and
right.
But for a movie set in the world of popular music in the late 70s, I mean, that's pretty much what the rooms everybody hung around in, like this shabby wood paneling with like posters tacked to the wall and.
And a bar, and pretty much everyone had like those tiny little party bars, those little which are nice, like the little 3-seat. Every time I saw one, I thought, I wouldn't mind having me one of those. Yeah, it'd be kind of nice. I would hang out by one of those all day. That'd be great.
Right. Just get yourself a couple little stools, and
I may have some issues I need to work through. That's what I want to do all day. But yeah, that's for another show.
You're an adult. You can do what you want.
Exactly. Thanks.
So, would you like to summarize what you saw in Living Legend, The King of Rock and Roll?
Well, I think what we're seeing is it kind of takes place at the sort of the tail end of Eli Canfield's career. So it's not the early part. We're catching him kind of late in his career. He's on tour, and he's got a kind of his entourage, sort of a Memphis Mafia type group surrounding him. Going to all the places with him, all the hotels, and he has his, what seems like soon-to-be estranged wife, Susan, who, towards the beginning of the film, just basically breaks it off with him and takes off. I don't want to go too much into that, but it's kind of the trials and tribulations that he's facing. So we kind of see him kind of falling apart, basically, because of just the pressures of touring. He's got a European tour coming up. He's got all sorts of stuff happening. His wife's leaving him, and he's just kind of a mess. And he's on a bunch of pills, and he's drinking. And they keep telling him basically throughout the movie, you're not 20 years old anymore. Like, you can't do these things to yourself anymore. And it's just his health problems that kind of ensue from that, which I believe was happening with Elvis as well towards the end. He was kind of pushing himself. He was on a lot of prescription medication. Although he wasn't as much of a drinker as he was more in the pills and stuff, but definitely had a lot of issues, and he was in and out of the hospital like quite a bit. Usually they'd say for like ingrown toenails or something. I don't know, whatever their cover story would be.
Exhaustion is usually the code word. Right.
Yeah. Puffy ankles. That's the kind of stuff you'd go into the hospital for. And I think, just to kind of take an aside here, it's one of the things, and I know that we've talked about this a little bit, the fact that they're kind of tackling Elvis's, I mean, it's Eli's, but having these drug problems was something that people didn't really talk about with Elvis during this time period.
Sure. Released in 1980, filmed in 1979. By 79, I think that there was a lot of like kind of plausible deniability in the Elvis camp as far as like the drug stuff goes. Of course, Red and Sonny West and Dave Hebler's book, Elvis What Happened, was out by 77.
Right.
So, accounts of Elvis's drug use were out there. But still, like, it was not accepted as, like, cold, hard facts. Like, these days, everybody's like, oh, yeah, Elvis did, like, a ton of drugs in the last, well, really his entire life, but especially in the last 5 years of his life. So a movie like this is really kind of ahead of its time as far as, like, depicting the actual real deal of Elvis and, like, what was going on with him.
Absolutely. There was the John Carpenter Elvis movie with Kurt Russell.
Right, which came out the same year as this.
Right, and that they don't touch on that at all,
Right.
And obviously, Kurt Russell, younger, leaner kind of guy, but yeah, they definitely handle Elvis very differently than Earl Owensby handles this Eli Canfield character, who's sort of like on the brink all the time. And as much as we're kind of praising it in some ways, I will say a lot of the production is not great. Like you said, it's raw, obviously. It didn't spend a lot of money on it. And the one thing I will say is Earl Owensby, they have some scenes on stage where he's lip-syncing to pretty good tunes by Roy Orbison, who wrote and performed all these songs. But I think he's more in the Roy Orbison school of performance, where he's just going to stand there and sing the song, and definitely not the Elvis dancing on stage, the moving around, the karate, all that stuff. That's something that was missing from the movie, I think. Not enough karate.
Well, certainly. I mean, there is some fist fighting.
A little bit.
But no karate. Yeah, you're right. I ended up watching this movie twice. And the first time, that was exactly my impression. Like, geez, if this guy's supposed to be Elvis, I mean, he's just kind of standing there and just kind of like, rocking back and forth. And it's just not very Elvis-like. Though, if you're depicting an Elvis at the end of his career, addled by drugs and his lifestyle and whatnot, then I'm like, okay, I'll allow that, like, as a stylistic choice. This depicts a severely past his prime, like, pop star. Okay. I'll buy it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and like I said, it's exactly what you said. He's a guy who kind of wants out. He's not happy doing this work anymore. And I think it feels pretty hollow. Mm-hmm. And he's just really kind of phoning in the performances at this point. Mm-hmm. So, and you even kind of get the sense of it from just the size venue that they're in. Because they're not, it's not like a huge concert hall that they're filling. It's just a small theater, maybe
1,000-seater.
Yeah, 1,500 tops, maybe. Mm-hmm. These feels pretty small places for a guy who's the king of rock and roll.
Well, Burl, it's not that his audience is waning; it's his audience is becoming more selective.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, definitely more selective audience. So,
but yeah. And once again, my first viewing, I'm just like, I didn't know who Earl Owensby was at all. Like, I'd never heard of the guy. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, this guy looks like the manager of like a North Carolina AutoZone. He it just doesn't really seem like a superstar. And then and it doesn't matter like what the scene is. The guy always looks like he's sweating.
Yeah. Definitely.
His hair is just kind of like matted down on his head and kind of, just kind of limp and shaggy. But once again, all that stuff works for a drug-addled pop star. And really, like, Earl Owensby's got like a certain like offbeat charisma about him that I didn't even really pick up on the first time. And the second time, I'm like, you know what? Yeah, this guy's got the goods.
Yeah, I think you just fell for him a little bit. Mm-hmm. You learned a little bit about him, and then you started liking the guy, and which is fine. You kind of find what you like with the character, but or the actor. But I'd agree. The first 20 minutes or so, I was just not that impressed with. But I just kept thinking to myself, like, well, it's not that great, but for some reason, there's something about this film is sort of winning me over to a degree. Mm-hmm. There's something about it that just has a little bit of charm. Maybe some Southern charm or something that is just instilled in it. There are some things missing from the film that, I think we can talk about down the road. And maybe it's also, I kind of like the Roy Orbison songs. I think that helped a lot.
And can we talk about the inclusion of Roy Orbison into this project for just a second?
Yeah, we should.
Which was basically like, that's the first thing we hear in the movie is original material by Roy Orbison, which was startling because the rest of the project seems so rinky-dink to have this true rock and roll Hall of Famer. And you would count yourself as a Roy Orbison fan, would you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
me too. Yeah. I mean, the guy is, you want to talk legend, this guy. I had to know, it's like, where does somebody of his stature find his way into this kind of like low budget film made in North Carolina in the late 70s? And when you look at the career of Roy Orbison, his initial burst of fame when he comes out, he's got all these hit singles. He's like right up there with the forefathers of rock and roll, like your Elvises and your Jerry Lee Lewis and Little Richard and like all those guys. Roy Orbison's like right in there. He was a specialist, like Roy Orbison definitely had some, raucous rockers in his repertoire. But where he really excelled were the mournful ballads.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
That became like his deal. And like so many other the original first wave rock and rollers, when the British invasion happened, these guys were just like killed off like dinosaurs, like virtually overnight. Not killed off. I mean, they just had to...
Out of vogue.
Yeah. I mean, they didn't exist in that pop space anymore. They either had to lean into the country stuff, like Jerry Lee Lewis did, and did really well with it, or like your Little Richards, he went into the gospel side of things and stayed relevant. Elvis, of course, went into film, and that was like his main deal during the wild and crazy 60s of British invasion and psychedelia and whatnot. But you got somebody like Roy Orbison who, I mean, the thing was, there was a place for him in the pop world when he was young. And then when he got older, he fit right into the like elder statesman role of like rock and roll. It's like, oh, this like legendary performer. But the world just had no place for like a 35-year-old Roy Orbison.
Yeah, absolutely not. Yeah, I don't think he barely sold any albums for in the 70s.
Right. And
he was making records, he just wasn't selling any.
Yeah, he really never stopped making music, but like a lot of the stuff would be like European releases only. He became kind of this forgotten figure. Just briefly on a personal note, my father-in-law loves to tell me the story. He's told it to me like many times about how he was in a hotel lounge in the 70s, probably right around then, and just in this hotel lounge, it was Roy Orbison. Like you saw him like just play this hotel lounge. Yeah. And it's just the gist of the story that, like the angle that he takes it was never like, oh, hey, I was lucky enough to see this like rock and roll legend in this like kind of intimate venue. It was always like, hey, you look up to musicians. Well, hey, I saw, Roy Orbison in a hotel lounge. He ain't shit. It's like basically the, right, I'm like, all right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. One of my heroes ain't shit. You got it. Yeah. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Read you loud and clear.
Yeah.
But yeah, so getting somebody like Roy Orbison in 1979 to record 5 or 6 songs for your soundtrack probably wasn't that expensive.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Yeah, because he wasn't doing much, and I know that he had some health problems around that time too. Because I think so. Elvis passed in 77, and then I want to say it was 77 or 78. Roy Orbison had bypass surgery. And he would have been, he's about the same age as Elvis, so right around 40. But I know that I think it was because he's a couple pack a day smoker.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So health-wise, he wasn't doing great. And I wouldn't be shocked if you told me that Roy Orbison just basically drove to his gigs in a station wagon with his stuff in the back and just set up and just basically stayed on the road. For pretty much the entirety of the decade of the 70s.
Right. And didn't really find his way back into the pop world until like younger artists who were, fans recorded his material and had like hit songs out of it. Like we're talking like Leonard Ronstadt doing Blue Bayou. It was probably sometime in the late 70s.
Yeah. Emmylou Harris and Graham Parsons, they do Love Hurts.
And also Nazareth recorded a version of that.
Yep, that's true. Yep, they did.
Probably their signature song, really.
Yep, Van Halen.
Yes, yes. Woman. You can't leave out the mighty Van Halen recording "Oh Pretty Woman" for was that Diver Down?
You got me there. I don't know. I'm not going to look that one up, but it could be. It's an earlier album. It's the 70s, so back when he would not have not been in vogue. So.
Certainly not. I mean, maybe like whatever early version of oldies radio that existed back then.
Right.
And then basically Roy Orbison found his way back through like unconventional means, himself, not his material. He appeared on an episode of Dukes of Hazzard in 1981, which was certainly my introduction to him as a young kid. Like, I never missed that show, and I was like, who is this angel-voiced goblin?
Yeah, right. Yeah, you could see why he's a big hit on radio. And I'm not trying to put him down or anything, but yeah, that might have, he wasn't a matinee idol.
No.
But voice of an angel, though.
Yeah, you don't have to be a matinee idol.
You don't have to be. No.
He's got a great face for radio.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
And then, of course,
Earl Owensby, not a matinee idol either.
No, but,
but
certain...
not bad. He's fine.
Certain rugged, country boy charm.
He's no Elvis.
He's no Elvis. He's certainly not.
Yeah.
And he would probably be the first to admit that.
They all would. They would all. Right. But yeah, I think you're right. Owensby probably got... Roy Orbison probably figured out, like, hey, man, I can throw this guy however much money, and he's going to write songs for this, and they'll be great or whatever. And I'm sure he got him for a song. I mean, I can't imagine...
Right.
He had to pay him much to do it at that point. And like you said, it's just on the cusp of maybe 2 or 3 years later, he had kind of come back in vogue. There was the Traveling Wilburys, all that stuff, the Black and White Night, and all that stuff. So
and don't forget Blue Velvet.
Oh, I couldn't forget Blue Velvet. Yeah,
which really put Roy Orbison back on the map.
Yep, that helped. Didn't hurt.
Yeah, it really did. It really did. There was right around when that came out, there was an episode of Saturday Night Live hosted by Dennis Hopper with musical guest Roy Orbison.
Wow.
I mean, it was a real powerhouse episode then. Oh, man, that was like the 1985-86 cast. You got your Dana Carvey and Phil Hartman and Dennis Miller. And
it's not the Anthony Michael Hall and Robert Downey Jr. era?
No. It's always strange for me to remember that Robert Downey Jr. was a cast member of Saturday Night Live.
Yep.
And on the same season as Randy Quaid. Not Dennis Quaid.
I don't think they could have gotten Dennis Quaid. But Randy Quaid, I think he was just sleeping in the studio and they just kept putting him in the episodes. It seems like something he'd do.
Yeah. I don't care how crazy he gets, I'll always be a fan. Randy Quaid.
Yeah.
What a nut.
He is a nut. Oh man. Have we gone? Have we lost the thread a little bit here?
I think we did. We need to find our way back. So, Eli Canfield is living under the thumb of his Svengali-like manager, Gentleman Jim.
Yeah.
Who bears more than a passing resemblance to Colonel Tom Parker.
Yeah, both corpulent, I think is a nice Rubenesque, a couple of Rubenesque gentlemen. Yeah.
Heavy set.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. So, and then even the name, Gentleman Jim, Colonel Tom, that kind of thing. Yeah, not very well disguised, but yes.
Right, and just the whole vibe being like, Sonny boy, you owe your entire career to me. Don't let me down now. Like that kind of like wheedling and cajoling, that sort of relationship that he has with his talent. And there's Ginger Alden, how she comes into the plot as Jeannie, is originally introduced as a date of one of Eli's sidemen, Teddy.
Teddy. You gotta like Teddy.
Yeah, you gotta love Teddy. It's played by Greg Carswell.
Yeah.
Basically, he's known Eli Canfield the longest. They got their start together in the 50s. And he's still a member of the band. Brings Jeannie to a party. Eli immediately notices her and then just kind of like takes over. Which, that's another thing, too, that felt like very authentically Elvis. Like Elvis just like rolling in on somebody's date.
Sure. Absolutely.
Without asking, if it's cool or anything, just kind of like, I like the looks of your woman. She's mine now, basically.
Mm-hmm. Like, just forget what you had in mind because this is now the Eli Canfield show.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. That does feel very authentic and kind of ripped from the pages of Elvis's life.
And I don't know when the Albert Goldman biography came out. I think that was until like 81. I want to say. So there's a lot of stories in that book where Elvis pulls that sort of routine where, somebody like, I met this fancy lady and I'm going to bring her to, one of Elvis's parties. And the next thing I know, like Elvis kind of like takes the lady by the back of the arm and they like leave the room and I like never saw her again,
And I will say the character of Teddy, as much as he's like kind of equal parts Red West and then Charlie Hodge. Like,
yeah.
Like to kind of somehow mix those two characters together. But I like him a lot more than I would like Charlie Hodge. Then I do like Charlie Hodge, I guess.
We keep threatening on doing a Charlie Hodge episode, which we definitely need to do in like season 2. Just like we should really get into it.
Yeah, and then we could really like let loose on that guy. Give him his comeuppance.
Yeah, oh my God, that guy. So anyway, but to Teddy's credit, really no hard feelings for Eli stealing his woman. And
yeah, I'm sure it's something that's probably happened for 20 years,
Right. And Eli and Jeannie, start a wonderful romance. There's at least one segment where they're, walking along on the beach. Roy
Orbison
song,
playing in the background.
Right.
Yeah.
Kind of a classic, romantic interlude. I believe there's a love scene.
Yeah. Yeah, it's where you find out just how hirsute Earl Owensby is. Right. He's it's the 70s, I guess. It was, yeah. Not a lot of manscaping going on in those days.
That boy's hairy as an ape.
Yeah, right. But yeah, it's like even that scene it's just really kind of dissolves a lot from thing to thing. Like it is a love scene, but yeah, in the tamest of sense.
Well, this is a PG picture, which we probably should have stated before this. I don't know. It doesn't make any difference. PG, R, who cares?
Yeah. Well, apparently they did because they went for a soft PG,
right?
Instead of a hard R.
In a film where you're dealing with the last couple of years of the life of Elvis Presley, it probably should be a rated R film.
Yeah, probably, and mostly I would say because of all the guns. Which is something we did not touch. There's a lot of scenes with guns, which also feels real authentic.
Right.
Very much like what it would be like to hang out with that group, the Memphis Mafia and Elvis, and just a bunch of guns around, and people just shooting them left and right, and being on desks and all that stuff. Like everybody always packing.
Right, and there's a scene which reminded us both of a similar scene in Taxi Driver.
Oh, yeah, where he's buying guns.
Yeah, you got Eli Canfield sitting behind a desk. He's got his boys hanging around. The gun salesman comes in. He's got this, padded case just full of hardware. And the guys are, like, getting everything out. They're, like, dry firing all the guns and everything, which kind of makes me cringe. Like, oh, jeez.
Yeah.
And then Eli is like, "Did you bring any bullets? Hand them over." It's like,
yeah.
And the salesman's getting like really nervous, and one of the boys just starts counting out like $100 bills. Like, tell me when to stop. Mm-hmm. And it's just like a really uncomfortable scene, and it's very tense. It's probably my favorite scene in the movie, really. Just like,
yeah, it's up there. I know it's a real hard decision for you between that and then the love scene.
Sure.
Yeah. But yeah, it's probably that one, and we'll talk about that one with Teddy a little bit later. Those are
sure. Yeah, we'll get into it. But there's another gun scene where they're all outside. There's Eli. There's all the boys. They got a bunch of like beer cans set up, and Eli's just shooting at the cans. Mm-hmm. And he's the only one shooting. He's the only one who gets a turn. Everybody's cheering every time he shoots. And that's a scene that I feel belongs in more Elvis biographies because that also felt very real to me.
Yeah, absolutely. But that probably was just like in the basement. Just all them standing around shooting stuff in the basement. But yeah, I know. I agree. Yeah, that anytime they had an opportunity and some free time, well, let's just all hop in a couple cars and we'll go down here take as many guns and as much ammo as we can handle and just go shoot at stuff. And then Ginger Alden, you can tell, probably spent a lot of time doing that because in that scene, she grabs a gun and just starts shooting.
Right.
And looks pretty comfortable with it. So,
sure. Yeah, I don't think you spend any time with Elvis in the 70s and like not at least a little comfortable around guns. It's just,
Absolutely. So yeah, kind of after that scene with the guns, he has some issues. He winds up in the hospital for a little bit, and he's from exhaustion. That's what they're calling it. And Teddy sneaks in to talk to him. It's a pretty heartfelt, little scene between them. Then later on, Gentleman Jim is basically like, you got to get rid of the girl. He can't see her anymore.
Oh, yeah. It's the scene between Teddy and Gentleman Jim, and there is just one part where Teddy's kind of being like a smartass, and Gentleman Jim smacks him in the face, and it looks so real. It's just this real hard smack to the face, and grabs him by the shirt. And Teddy looks so taken aback. I would be willing to bet that he didn't know that was coming.
They might have, in the direction, just said, like, you know what? Like, they might have played the scene pretty straight a couple of times and said, like, this take, just haul off and hit him.
Right.
Yeah, because it looked pretty real. And he looked, like, really shocked by it, too. And he's not, I don't think he's that good of an actor.
Right.
So.
But just, like, absolutely stunned. And, I had to, like, roll that back a couple times. I'm like, wow, he, like, really got him. And then there is a scene not too long after that where Teddy is he on drugs? Is he super drunk? What's going on?
And then he's out by the pool.
Right.
And he's got what they claim to be Eli's old guitar from when he started out. We'll get into that in a minute. And he's playing electric guitar next to the pool, but then on the diving board.
Right.
And he's like, this is how we used to do it back in the day, which I'm assuming there was probably a diving portion of the Eli Canfield show that they no longer did. He's like, instead of all the water stuff he took out, he's, got older.
Right.
And he didn't want to do it. Teddy falls in the pool and gets electrocuted.
Right. And, I just had a few notes about this scene. He makes this big deal out of claiming this is just like the guitar you had when we were like starting out. And if the timeline is the same as Elvis, he would have basically been talking about starting their career in the mid-50s.
Right.
Unfortunately, he's playing a Fender Mustang, which the first model year was 1964.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
a rockin' little guitar.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. In Teddy's defense, though, he is on drugs. So he might have just grabbed the wrong guitar.
Right.
But it might not be a guitar aficionado.
Right.
Or a luthier or anything, or a guitar tech. But still, you would think you'd remember what the old guitar he was. I would think he would, Eli probably wouldn't play in a Strat.
Or a Telecaster, right?
Telecaster or a Strat.
Right. And then, of course, there were no such thing as red Fender guitars in the 50s either. That didn't come around until like 60s. They would have been either sunburst, they would have been butterscotch blonde, or natural finish.
Right.
It's like, there were no colored Fenders back then. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. That's, for the geeks in the audience.
Right.
Something like that just can really take me out of a movie, though. Like,
the old Bakelite pick guards and all that stuff. But
right. Probably one of the more egregious examples is the opening scene of the Buddy Holly story, starring Gary Busey, where you've got young Buddy Holly and his band playing in a roller rink, and you've got Gary Busey playing a Fender Bronco, which I believe the first model year of that was like 1967.
Okay.
So this is supposed to be like 1954 Lubbock, Texas. You've got this. It's like, who did the guitar stuff for this?
Yeah, don't spoil any more of that movie for me, though, because I haven't seen it, so I don't know how it ends.
Right.
So, I kid.
And, for the geeks at home, Teddy's also playing through a Fender Deluxe Reverb in the scene.
Which he did not mention was what he started out with. So it's plausible. So
right.
we'll
So it's entirely
we're
possible.
We'll allow that.
Right. It's like, I didn't bring out my old amp. This is just, the one I use on stage.
Yeah. But do you think, so here's the one thing, so this is like one of those Mythbuster things. Do you think falling into a pool with a plugged-in guitar would electrocute you to death?
It's nothing that I would recommend doing.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do it. I'm just,
Right. I wonder, though, not being like really an electrician or anything like that, would there have been like circuit breakers in effect in the late 70s? I mean, would those have been standard in like everyone's house? Because like basically something like that goes in the water, shorts it out, flicks it off at the breaker.
Right.
Like pretty much instantaneously. That's what I think would happen.
That's what I think would happen too. But, once again, it's their story. That's how they're telling it. So
right.
I don't know.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff like that. You see the like toaster in the bathtub and all this other stuff where certainly I never try this sort of thing, but in the movies, that's always like this instantaneous electricity bath and people's skin catches on fire and stuff. And I'm just like, I don't know.
The hair does crazy stuff and the smoke comes up. But you're hearing it from Wade and Burl. If you're going to play an electric guitar near a pool or an open body of water, please stay off the diving board and remain 6 feet away from the edge.
Sure.
Just good rule of thumb.
Right.
Or if you're setting up to play at a party, if you're in a band or something, 6 to 8 feet away from the pool, probably a great idea. So,
right.
There you go.
And just in general, like having electrified stuff in the same room as the pool just kind of makes me nervous.
Yep. Lights. Don't have lights in there.
Right.
Just torches only.
So it's worth noting, so to speak, that the director of this film, Worth Keeter, is his name. Worth is his first name, Worth, and Keeter, Keeter,
yeah,
which is a down-home name if I've ever heard one. Later, made a living directing several episodes of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Hey, there you go. I did not know that. My research did not lead me to that. But
right.
Yeah.
Did a lot of stuff with Earl Owensby and then struck out on his own, like kiddie TV stuff in the 90s.
Whatever pays the bills, man.
It's a living.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the big thing in this movie, like after Teddy passes away, because he's kind of getting pushed out by Gentleman Jim, and they're trying to get rid of the girlfriend, and they're trying to get rid of everybody else around him so that Gentleman Jim can control Eli Canfield and get him to go on this tour overseas because he's got so much wrapped up in it and all the money and everything. Basically, towards the end, Eli just gets rid of Gentleman Jim, like locks him out of his house, and then it kind of dissolves to him with the girlfriend and all this and kind of a happily ever after moment, which obviously Elvis didn't get. It's a very different ending for him. It's revisionist, I think, is what you would call the ending of the movie. Because, I think there's so many people, I mean, you and I would agree on this, as much as Colonel Tom Parker did for Elvis in his career, you just wish he dumped that guy and gotten better management so much earlier in his career. Right. He's paying him just an arm and a leg. There are things he could have done on tour, gone overseas, found an Asian market, a European market, all these things he could never go do. Brazil, they would have loved him.
Right.
And they have like massive concerts down there. Like how great would that have been? Elvis in front of like 700,000 people.
And Elvis loved traveling. I mean, he went all over Europe, like...
He had his own plane, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
Makes it real easy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No standing in lines, don't have to take your shoes off and all that stuff.
And of course, it was all down to Colonel Tom Parker not being like a U.S. citizen.
Yeah.
He was, what was he, Dutch?
Oh, I don't remember.
And
Canadian?
just the fear... Yeah, they're all Canadian to me.
Yeah.
But just the fear that if Colonel Tom were to like leave the continental U.S., he might not be allowed back in, not being like a U.S. citizen. But just kept Elvis out of really a lot of important markets. I mean, can you imagine how much they would have loved Elvis in Japan?
Quite a bit. Yeah. I think they would have been big fans.
Like an Elvis at Budokan, can you imagine?
Man, wow. Yeah, no, I can't imagine. Unfortunately, I'll never see it. But what we could do, maybe we could convince Earl Owensby to become Eli Canfield again and do like a tour in Japan.
Right. Yeah, in his late 80s, dye the hair black.
Yeah, lip sync to some Roy Orbison.
Right.
Yeah.
Just kind of like stiffly rock back and forth and,
Exactly. Yeah. Kind of like half, like kind of phone in a performance, a lip syncing performance on stage. I think you could do it. I think you could pull it off. I think it'd be great.
Well, all you got to do with Earl Owensby is to tell him he can't do it, and that's the inspiration he needs.
Yeah, pretty much. Or just tell him that there's some money in it, because I think he's a guy who likes making some money. Right.
So anyway, just briefly about the ending, your interpretation is that it's the happy ending that Elvis never had?
Yeah, I think so. Where he winds up with somebody. And, I think, obviously, Ginger Alden is involved, so she's like, probably imagining, I don't know if they consulted her at all about this, but I'm sure in her mind it wouldn't have been great if we wound up together and he got rid of all this stuff. But yeah, it wasn't meant to be. So yeah, I think something like that, something he finds some let's just say he finds some happiness in his life.
Yeah.
So
yeah, because my interpretation was that he did die at the end, and the scenes of him and Jeannie walking down the beach were just kind of like the last wishes of a dying man.
Yeah.
And him tearing up the European tour posters, kind of like him symbolically like killing himself.
Destroying the king.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cutting everybody out of his life, destroying this image of himself. Right. And it's like this kind of like dreamy, romantic closing credits crawl of him on the beach with this lady who, had already been like sent away and like kind of banished from his life. But this movie is like 2001: A Space Odyssey. Like what happens at the end? It's really up to you, man.
Yeah, it's Citizen Kane. What's the rosebud? Yeah.
Right.
Yep. I don't know.
Well, what's a sled?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I guess I should watch that movie. I'm kidding. I've seen it. Yeah.
Spoilers for Citizen Kane.
Yeah. But why was it his last words?
Just memories of the last time he was like truly innocent and carefree.
Yeah, I think it's dementia. I think that's what it is.
Right.
But we'll never know. We'll never know that. We'll never really know what happened to Eli Canfield. We can only speculate. We do know what happened to Elvis.
Right.
Allegedly. But all in all, like I said, a movie I thought was going to be kind of a sleeper and wound up being kind of good in a way. Like good in its badness.
Right.
Yeah.
So how would you rate it?
What do you want to use as our rating system? Do you want to use like stars? Do you want to use jumpsuits? Like we were like...
let's use Memphis Mafia members.
Well, okay. So like Red's at the top.
Mm-hmm.
Charlie's at the bottom.
Yes.
Man. So it's neither one of those because it's not a Charlie. And it's not a Red. I'd give it a Diamond Joe.
Okay.
Which is like, in the middle, kind of above average, I would say. Mm-hmm. Diamond Joe's pretty good. How about you?
Sure, he's all right. Let's see. I'd give it maybe a Sunny West.
Oh, okay. Good call.
Right. Not quite a Red, but certainly better than a Lamar Fike.
Yeah. Okay. I'll take that as a rating. So I think we're pretty comparable is what we would rate it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Cool. And as we're wrapping this up, though, as I'm wont to do, sometimes when I'm doing all this research, I'm finding some facts, and then I bring them to you in a segment we call Would You Believe?
Oh, no. Here we go again.
Okay. Yeah. So I just got a couple of them, so bear with me.
Okay.
So, oddly enough, neither one of these are actually about Elvis. So, Earl Owensby, as you know, he was working on films. He was doing all this stuff. A little bit of an actor.
Sure.
And would you believe that Earl Owensby was up for a role in Dukes of Hazzard as Roscoe P. Coltrane and lost out to James Best?
They are
like not narrowly. I mean, I think obviously,
right.
but he was up for that part. Like he went in and auditioned for that part.
They are sort of physically similar, but to be honest, I think by the time Dukes of Hazzard was getting started, it would have been beneath Earl Owensby to walk away from his empire to go to series television. So I'm going to say I do not believe that.
That's correct. Yeah, I made that up.
Okay,
that is not a true fact.
Okay.
So
that's good.
All right. And the second, would you believe, of the two. So this is number 2 out of 2. So our second Would You Believe is about Roy Orbison.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we had already discussed he had bypass surgery in his early 40s. It was like the mid to late 70s when that happened to him, the 1970s. And not only was he a very heavy smoker, he had an incredibly poor diet.
Okay.
And he loved junk food, and he despised vegetables, but the vegetable he despised the most was carrots, because when he was a kid and his eyes were so bad, so his parents just force-fed him carrots to the point where he couldn't even stand them if somebody else at a table was eating them. Like, so if you ate with a Roy Orbison, you could not have carrots on your plate. Would you believe?
I am going to say yes, I do believe that.
Nah, I made that one up too.
Oh, damn it.
Yeah, I know. Well, 50-50. There you go.
Sure,
That's pretty good batting average.
Right.
There you go.
Oh, I have one for you.
Oh, great.
One of Wade's rare Would You Believes.
All right. Oh, lay it on me.
Okay, Earl Owensby in the mid-'80s decided to buy a unfinished nuclear power plant, like the entire grounds, and later, a couple years after that, converted the unfinished cooling tower into an enormous water tank. And that's where James Cameron filmed a lot of his underwater stuff in The Abyss.
The first part of it sounds like something a Bond villain would do.
Right.
And then the second part sounds like something a savvy businessman would do, who is also maybe a little crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm gonna say that's true.
It's 100% fact.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
Right.
Yeah, that's crazy. Oh man.
So yeah, Earl Owensby helped facilitate James Cameron's worst movie, The Abyss.
Yeah. It's not great.
Which I've always found to be a bit abysmal.
All right, and on that,
just briefly, so if that's not his worst movie, what's James Cameron's worst movie?
oh man, I don't know. I'm trying to think of all of his movies.
You got Piranha 2: The Spawning, Terminator 2,
Those are
Aliens.
yeah, it's
Jesus
not
Christ.
worst.
Yeah, it's certainly not. True Lies, Titanic, Avatar. Not that many.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it's his worst movie. Let's just say it's his worst.
Yeah,
He should be ashamed of himself.
By
for doing
far
that.
his worst movie.
There you go. I don't know about you, but I think that might be a wrap on our season 1, episode 10.
Yeah, well, for those of you out there in podcast world that stuck with us this far, I thank you very much because, I don't even know. Is this entertaining or not? Who knows? It is for me, so who cares?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, you get a kick out of it. So
Yeah.
Yeah. So, we're going to have a little after party. Just me and you,
man.
pal. Me and you, little after party. What do you think?
Yeah. Me and Burl having a little pizza party.
Yeah, I'm going to roll out my Earl Canfield little mini bar. And inspired by the movie, and we'll just I'll start mixing some drinks.
I'm going to pull out my Fender Deluxe Reverb and my Fender Mustang. I'm going to get on the end of a diving board. I'm going to start weeping openly and playing rockabilly licks.
Don't pull a Teddy, man. Don't pull a Teddy. Not at our party. Do that at the after party.
So can we make Don't Pull a Teddy a thing?
Let's try. Let's really try. Don't pull a Teddy. Yeah, we'll write it down and maybe we'll put it in next season. Maybe that'll be our catchphrase. Don't pull a Teddy.
Yeah, by which a really drunkenly embarrassing display of emotion around a bunch of people in which you subsequently get injured or killed.
You electrocute yourself in a pool. Yeah.
Say, decide at a party that you hate everybody and you go up on the roof and you're just standing up there in your boxers and announce, I hate you all. And then you fall off the roof and break your arm.
That's it. Yeah. But don't pull a Teddy. That might be our t-shirt. Suspicious minds. Wade and Burl say, don't pull a Teddy.
So you want to give any shout outs to anybody else in podcast world?
No, absolutely not. No, our good friends Brad and Pat, who do the Elvis Book Club.
Yes.
Give them a listen. And also, if you want to get in touch with us, you can email us at suspiciousmindspodcast77@gmail.com. Or if you just want to like leave a message or text us, you can do that at 773-389-4276.
Excellent.
Yeah, and you get ones you want to give? Okay.
Oh, sure. Just very good friends of mine, Justin Johnson and Lindsay Reber. They do a podcast called Don't Push Pause Podcast, and they do real deep dives on 1980s, 1990s films. It's exhaustively researched. It's very well done. Neither one of them will ever listen to any of these episodes, so it's not like they're going to hear this shout out, but they're very busy. But yeah.
Well, they're exhaustively researching stuff unlike us. We're kind of winging it.
Right. Yeah.
We watched something on YouTube twice and just said, let's start rolling. So
yeah. We could talk an hour about that, sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, check that out if you like films from the 80s and 90s and two very smart people talking very smartly, unlike us.
And do you want to tell them about any social media stuff?
You can find us on Facebook at Suspicious Minds Podcast with Wade and Burl. Yep. And the "and" is one of those little "and" signs. It's not like a word spelled out. You can find us on SoundCloud. Where else can you find us?
We're going to be on iTunes. We're under review for iTunes, but that should be happening imminently. So, yeah, we're on iTunes. We're on SoundCloud. And we'll be on Instagram once you figure all that stuff out. We'll post all that stuff on the other pages. We'll let you guys know where that's at. So, all right.
By the time this episode comes out, it'll be old news.
We'll probably have to re-record this. Excellent. Well, thanks for sticking with us for the first season. And, we'll be back shortly with a whole new season of ridiculous stuff. And I think this next season, Charlie Hodge better watch out. He better watch his back.
From beyond the grave, but still,
that's a guy that should have pulled a Teddy.
He really should have. He really really missed his true calling, electrocuting himself in a swimming pool with a bunch of people watching.
Exactly.
Right.
All right. Well, I think that's it from me, Burl, and
me, Wade.
No, there you go. Well, thanks again, and we'll catch up with you next season.